very warm welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to join me today for this session on addiction that we can explore together. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Pamela McKechnie. I am the Clinical Training Manager here at LifeLink. I deliver training on suicide prevention, mental health first aid, self-harm and counselling skills. And I'm also one of the trainers on the Professional Development Award for counselling children and young people that we deliver here at LifeLink. I've been a therapist for around 9 years, supporting children, young people and adults. And I've supported families for over 20 years now in the community. And that has included supporting children and adults affected by addiction. That's an introduction to myself. I just want to say a thank you to Tom Woods, our Digital Marketing Manager, for his support. I wrote this session and Tom kindly pulled the slides together and supported me with this delivery. So a thank you to him. The focus of our session today is on addiction, but first of all, I'd like to take a few moments just to tell you a wee bit about where Tom and I work, a wee bit about LifeLink and LifeLink Work Well. So LifeLink Work Well is a strand of LifeLink. Its aims are to optimise employee potential, equip managers for inclusive leadership, and we're also committed to workplace equity. There are several strands to LifeLink, with Work Well being a new area of business. So LifeLink Work Well is part of the charity LifeLink, which has been providing mental health and wellbeing services to adults and young people for the last 30 years. And we've taken that expertise and experience gained over the last 30 years and created a product that will enhance any workplace wellbeing programmes. So this includes counselling services, wellbeing services, specialist and consultancy services, employee access to our state-of-the-art mental health and wellbeing app, an online training academy, corporate organisational healthcare consultancy, mental health consultancy and blended healthcare. I'm sure you'll agree that this is an extensive list. And importantly, LifeLink is a charity. Is focused on reinvesting any profits into the local community. Therefore, not only adding value to your workplace programmes, but also supporting local communities alongside this. So our session today is a taster session. We're going to look at addiction over the next 45 to 60 minutes. Our heading today is Unmasking Addiction. There are more in-depth sessions as part of our service. So if you're interested in anything I say today or would like some more information, the email is on your screen there, inquiries@lifelink.org.uk. Please feel free to drop us a line. We'd like to hear from you. So we can think of addiction in many different ways. And according to a recent study by Stirling University, the number of people in treatment for substance use in the UK is on the rise. Therefore, our aims today for this session are to understand addiction and its prevalence in society, understanding different types of addiction, some of the myths and misconceptions around addiction, and how to support someone whilst also supporting ourselves. Exploring the realities of addiction, its effects on personal and professional life, and strategies for supporting and for support and recovery. If you do have any questions or comments during this delivery today, please use the Q&A section and I'll return to that at the end of the presentation. For this first section, we're going to go through understanding addiction. types of addiction and common misconceptions. So where do our minds take us when we think of addiction? Possibly to tobacco, alcohol, or perhaps substance use. Perhaps we think of cocaine or heroin use. But I wonder if we also might consider caffeine and the conversations we openly have about our coffee orders with colleagues, friends. For example, are you a caramel, macchiato, skim, extra shot, extra hot, extra whip, sugar-free kind of person? Or a nice half-calf, sugar-free cinnamon, skinny latte kind of person? Or do we often compare our favourite energy drinks that have got high levels of caffeine? Do we compare them with friends and colleagues? Do we consider addictive behaviours when we think of addiction? You may think of gambling or gaming, but do we also consider our mobile phone use? How often do we connect or even make eye contact with each other when we're not on our phones? Could it be that we're all addicted to something in some way? Are some addictions more hidden or socially acceptable? Let's take some time today just to explore this while we're keeping that thought in mind. We're going to start our session today by looking at substance use disorders, or SUDS for short. So SUDS are complex conditions in which there is uncontrolled use of a substance despite harmful consequences. Individuals with SUDS have an intense focus on using a certain substance, such as alcohol, tobacco, or illicit drugs, to the point where the person's ability to function in day-to-day life becomes impaired. SUDS, or substance use disorders, are serious chronic conditions that require comprehensive and often long-term treatment strategies. Therefore, early intervention and ongoing support can significantly improve outcomes for individuals struggling with SUDS. So how do we know it's a disorder? There are a few characteristics on your screen there. Loss of control, taking the substance in larger amounts or over longer periods than intended. Neglect of responsibilities and relationships, so continued substance use despite having persistent or recurring social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by effects of the substance. The risk, so recurrent substance use in situations which are sometimes physically hazardous, so such as driving or operating a machine while impaired by substance use. Tolerance, the need for markedly increased amounts of substance to achieve intoxication or desired effect. And withdrawal, experience withdrawal symptoms when not using the substance, which can vary depending on the substance use. For example, anxiety, irritability, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, hand tremors, and seizures are just some of the withdrawal symptoms that you may experience with a disorder. Some of the common substances involved in SUDS are alcohol, and you may have seen some of the publicity around Alcohol Awareness Week and some of the information around that from NHS Inform around, advice and not to drink more than 14 units over the course of a week on a regular basis, and how regular drinking over this amount can add to illness, accidents, and injuries. There's opioids, which include prescription pain relievers. heroin and synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, tobacco that can lead to nicotine dependence, and stimulants such as cocaine and prescription stimulants, Adderall and Ritalin, for example. Cannabis, leading to cannabis dependency. Hallucinogens, including substances like LSD, PCP. You may have heard of names like angel dust, supergrass, rocket fuels, magic mushrooms, and inhalants, solvents, aerosols, and gases, which are inhaled for psychoactive effects. How do we know it's a SUD? So it's a diagnosed disorder. So SUDs are diagnosed based on a combination of behavioural, cognitive, and physiological criteria outlined in the DSM-5. So that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. A professional assessment typically includes a thorough history of the substance use, evaluation of the impact of substance use on daily functioning, identification of any co-occurring mental health disorders. Effective treatment for SUDS often involves a combination of approaches. So things like behavioural therapies such as cognitive behavioural therapy, contingency management and motivational interviewing, medications to manage withdrawal symptoms and cravings, for example, methadone, support groups such as AA and CA and NA, which we'll go on to speak about as well, and also inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation programs, depending on the severity of the disorder. So if you're struggling to relate to SUDS, I think the following animation, which is 5 minutes long, is a simple but effective way that can help to increase our understanding of SUDS. The film that we're about to watch is used by Public Health Scotland and is covered within the section on substance use within the mental health first aid course that we deliver here at Lifelink. quite a powerful look at addiction there. Hopefully you agree. So we're going to look at behavioural addictions. Behavioural addictions are a group of mental health disorders characterised by compulsive engagement in rewarding non-substance related behaviours, despite the adverse consequences. So similarly to substance use disorders, these behaviours activate the brain's reward system and can lead to significant impairment or distress. They may, however, be more hidden, or some may be more socially acceptable. This list is not exhaustive. There's some on your screen there. So these are common types of behavioural addictions, such as gambling addiction, where the symptoms include the preoccupation with gambling, increased amounts of money gambled to achieve excitement, unsuccessful efforts to control or stop gambling, and lying to conceal the extent of gambling. Internet addiction, which is, I'd said earlier, it may also include phone addiction, includes excessive use of the internet, particularly for gaming, social networking, or browsing that interferes with daily life. So symptoms include a preoccupation with online activities, withdrawal symptoms when not online, and unsuccessful attempts to cut back. Gaming addiction. So gaming addiction is a recognised gaming disorder by the World Health Organization, and it involves a pattern of gaming behaviour characterised by impaired control over gaming. So the symptoms include spending excessive amounts of time gaming, neglecting personal, social, education and occupational responsibilities, and experience withdrawal symptoms when unable to play. Shopping addiction. The symptoms include frequent and uncontrollable urges to shop, accumulating debt and experiencing euphoria or relief when making purchases. Sex addiction. Symptoms include an inability to control sexual urges, engaging in risky sexual behaviours and neglecting responsibilities due to preoccupation with sex. Exercise addiction. Symptoms include prioritising exercise over other important activities. Exercising despite injuries and experiencing distress when unable to exercise. You could add more behaviours to this. You may want to think about work addiction, and how this can be reinforced in some work cultures and environments. So the behavioural addiction, the diagnosis and treatment. So behavioural addictions are diagnosed based on criteria similar to those used for substance use disorders, including persistent and repetitive engagement in the behaviour despite the harmful consequences. There's loss of control there. The effective treatment for behavioural addiction often includes a combination of approaches as well, such as, behavioural therapies, CBT. CBT is commonly used to help individuals to identify and change unhealthy thought patterns and behaviours. Medications as well. In some cases, medications may be prescribed to manage underlying mental health conditions, such as depression and anxiety, which may contribute to the addictive behaviour. Support groups and psychoeducation, lifestyle changes, including developing hobbies and strengthening social connections, can help. Behavioural addictions can be just as debilitating as substance use disorders, impacting individuals mentally, physically and social well-being and their social well-being. So early recognition and intervention are crucial for the effective treatment and recovery. And understanding and addressing the underlying causes combined with appropriate therapeutic approaches can significantly improve outcomes for those struggling with behavioural addictions. So let's have a wee look at the science behind this, how addiction affects the brain, and some common misconceptions about addiction. So addictive substances and behaviours trigger a release of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. This release reinforces the behaviour, making the individual want to repeat it. Pathways involved: the prefrontal cortex is responsible for decision making and self-control, is affected by addiction. Tolerance mechanisms. So over time, the brain's reward system becomes less sensitive to dopamine due to repeated exposure to the addictive substance or behaviour. The effect is this leads to tolerance, where the individual needs an increasingly larger amount of the substance or a more intense engagement in the behaviour to achieve the same pleasurable effect. Dependence can be physical and psychological. So physically, the body adapts to the presence of the substance, leading to withdrawal symptoms when the substance is not available. Psychological dependence. The individual experiences cravings and a strong desire to engage in the behaviour or use the substance without physical withdrawal symptoms. The changes in the brain. So chronic addiction can cause structural changes in the brain, including the reduction of grey matter in areas associated with judgment, decision-making and behaviour control. There are also changes in how the brain regions communicate with each other, particularly those involved in impulse control and stress response. Impact on other neurotransmitter systems such as serotonin, involved in mood regulation. And serotonin levels can be disrupted by addiction, contributing to mood disorders. Glutamate is essential for learning and memory. Glutamate levels are altered, which also affect cognitive function. There are common misconceptions about addiction. You may have heard some that are, you may have heard some before, or some that are said on a regular basis. But unfortunately, these can lead to judgment and prejudice, discrimination and stigma, which can lead to further isolation and lack of support for the person with the addiction, as well as increase their feelings of shame and guilt. So let's have a look at a few of these myths just now. So the first one there, addiction is a moral failing. The reality is addiction is a complex disease that affects brain function and behaviour. It's not as simple as a result of weak willpower or moral shortcomings. Addicts can quit anytime they want. So the reality is, while some individuals can quit on their own, many need professional help due to the profound changes in brain function and the strong cravings and withdrawal symptoms experienced. Addiction only affects people from certain backgrounds. The reality is addiction can affect anyone, regardless of age, race, gender, socioeconomic status or background. And while certain factors like genetics and environment can increase susceptibility, no group is immune to addiction. Prescription drugs are safe and non-addictive. The reality is many prescription drugs, particularly opioids and stimulants, have a high potential for addiction if misused. Relapse means treatment has failed. Actually, relapse is often part of the recovery process. It does not signify failure, but rather indicates that treatment needs to be adjusted or reinstated. Addiction is only about physical dependence. Well, psychological dependence is characterised by strong cravings and compulsive behaviour. So it's a significant impact of addiction. So even behaviours without physical withdrawal symptoms can be highly addictive. Once an addict, always an addict. And you can get addicted to behavioural activities. So behavioural addictions such as gambling, internet, phone use, and shopping can be just as debilitating as substance use disorders and affect the brain function similarly. And the one I just said there that I've often heard, once an addict, always an addict. And the reality is, with proper treatment and support, individuals can and do recover from addiction, leading fulfilling lives without substance or addictive behaviours. So understanding the science of addiction and addressing common misconceptions are crucial steps in effectively supporting individuals affected by addiction. Recognising it as a chronic disease influenced by complex interactions between genetics, environment, and brain chemistry can help to reduce stigma and promote a more compassionate and evidence-based approach to treatment and recovery. You may have seen that the Recovery Collective held its first alcohol-free festival in Glasgow on the 30th of June this year. And this is an example of how we can come together, connect, and support recovery. So what signs and symptoms do we need to look out for when we are struggling with addiction ourselves or supporting someone with addiction? Recognising the signs and symptoms of drug use and or addictive behaviours can help in identifying the problem early and seeking the appropriate intervention. So these signs can be physical, behavioural and psychological. The physical signs, so changes in appearance. You may see a sudden weight loss or weight gain, bloodshot eyes, dilated or constricted pupils, unusual body odours or poor personal hygiene. Health issues such as frequent nosebleeds can be from snorting drugs. Persistent coughs or respiratory problems. Needle marks from injecting drugs. And some unexplained injuries or accidents. Sleep patterns, changes in sleep patterns such as insomnia or excessive sleep. Some behavioural signs. You may start to see some secretive behaviour, increased secrecy, locked doors, being vague about your whereabouts, changes in social circles, hanging about with a different group of friends, maybe people that have been or are known to be associated with drug use. Neglecting responsibilities. You could see a decline in performance at work, school, neglecting household responsibilities and getting into trouble legally. Financial problems, an unexplained need for money, borrowing or stealing money, missing valuables or cash. Some of the psychological signs you might see are extreme changes in mood swings, including irritability, agitation, and unusual hyperactivity or being lethargic. Paranoia, suspiciousness, anxiety and hallucinations. And a lack of motivation, loss of interest in activities once enjoyed, and a lack of energy. The physical signs and symptoms of behavioural addictions. You might see fatigue, headaches, weight changes, neglecting appearance, sleep disturbance, irregular sleep patterns due to the addiction. For example, staying up late to gamble or play video games, staying up later on your phone at night. Behavioural signs of behavioural addiction, so compulsive engagement and uncontrollable urge to engage in the behaviour despite knowing its harmful effects. That neglecting duties, the amount of time spent, the excessive amount of time spent on the activity, often to the detriment of other important aspects in your life. And that loss of control, the inability to cut down or stop the behaviour, despite several attempts to do so. The psychological signs of behavioural addictions include a preoccupation, so constantly thinking about the behaviour or planning the next opportunity to engage in the behaviour. And those mood changes that we spoke about as well. The feelings of euphoria during the behaviour followed by feelings of guilt, shame or depression afterwards. And the irritability, so becoming irritable or anxious when unable to engage in the behaviour. So lots of signs and symptoms of drug use and other addictive behaviours that we can recognise there. And recognising the signs and symptoms of drug use and addictive behaviours early, as I've said, can significantly impact the effectiveness of the intervention and the support. So understanding these indicators helps in approaching the individual with compassion and seeking professional help when necessary. You may be more aware of some of the emotional and psychological effects. So addiction, whether it's substance or behaviour, can have a profound emotional and psychological effect on an individual. And these effects can be both the causes and the consequences of the addictive behaviour. Addiction often leads to chronic stress due to the continuous cycle of seeking, using and recovering from the effects of the substance or the behaviour. Life stressors, physical stress, anxiety, fear of being judged, that's social anxiety, panic attacks are also major depressive disorders are all things to look out for as well. Dual diagnosis. Many individuals with addiction also suffer from co-occurring mental health disorders, such as depression, which can complicate treatment and recovery. Those feelings of guilt, shame and helplessness. So guilt can often arise from actions taken while under the influence of the substance or during the compulsive behaviour, such as lying, stealing, or neglecting responsibility. Harm to others, so individuals may feel guilt for the pain and distress that addiction causes to their loved ones. The shame, the social stigma, negative societal attitudes towards addiction can exacerbate feelings of shame, leading to further isolation and a reluctance to seek help. And that despair, repeated failed attempts to quit or reduce substance use or addictive behaviours can lead to feelings of despair and hopelessness about the future. There are ways we can look at coping with these emotional and psychological effects. Stress management, professional support, addressing anxiety and depression through therapy, through medication, therapeutic interventions, things that we can do to reduce the guilt and shame, learning to practice self-compassion, and recognising that addiction is a disease, not a moral failing, can help to reduce feelings of guilt and shame. Support groups such as AA and NA, Narcotics Anonymous, can help us to overcome these feelings of helplessness and empower people within their recovery. Relapse prevention, so developing a relapse prevention plan and having a strong support system can help to provide a safety net and reduce those feelings of helplessness. The emotional and psychological effects of addiction are complex and multifaceted, often involving stress, anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, and helplessness. Understanding and increasing these effects through comprehensive treatment and support can significantly enhance the recovery process and improve overall well-being. Seeking professional help and building a robust support network are crucial steps in managing these emotional and psychological challenges. Talking about addiction through sessions just like this one is one of the ways that we can help to reduce the stigma around addiction and support someone to reach out for help when they need it. So how do we do that? How do we communicate with someone? How do we support someone with addiction while supporting ourselves? So communicating effectively with a loved one or colleague about their addiction requires sensitivity, patience, and a strategic approach. Employing active listening and empathy can foster a supportive environment that encourages open dialogue and positive outcomes. I think Brené Brown's take on empathy can help us all to understand how we can best support someone. And in this clip on empathy, which is just 3 minutes long.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Such a great Such a great look at empathy there from Brené Brown. So how do we do this? How do we talk to a loved one or colleague about their addiction? Well, prepare yourself, educate yourself, learn about addiction and its effects to better understand what your loved one is experiencing. Choosing the right time and place. Find a private and quiet setting where you can talk without interruptions or distractions. Ensure both you are calm and composed as well. Approach with compassion. Using I statements. Frame your concerns from your perspective to avoid sounding judgmental. For example, I'm worried about you because I've noticed changes in your behaviour. Express concern, not judgment. Focus on expressing your concern and care for their well-being rather than criticising their actions. Being specific and honest. For example, I noticed you've been missing work a lot lately and it worries me. Be honest about your feelings as well. Encourage professional help. Suggest treatment options. Be prepared for resistance. Stay calm. Your loved one or colleague may react defensively or deny the problem. Stay calm and avoid arguing. Repeat your concern and willingness to support. Setting boundaries are going to be crucial. While expressing your support, also setting clear boundaries regarding behaviours that you can no longer tolerate. Ensure these boundaries are communicated with empathy and care. That active listening and empathy. So we may feel that we do give our full attention at times throughout our day to conversations, but really giving your full attention, maintaining eye contact, nodding and using verbal affirmations like, I see and I understand. Avoid interrupting. Let them speak without interrupting or immediately offering solutions. This shows respect for their thoughts and feelings. Reflecting and summarising. For example, it sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed by everything. Validating the person's feelings. I can see that this is really hard for you. Or it's understandable you feel this way. Be non-judgmental. Said sharing your feelings. For example, I feel scared when I see you struggling. Being consistent, following through on promises, and showing that you're reliable and supportive. Respecting the person's privacy. So you may agree to keep the conversation confidential. However, if there's a risk of harm to themselves or others, then it's about being clear that you're unable to keep that to yourselves. If the person's unable to keep themselves safe, you may have to contact emergency services at that point. Avoid blame. So to summarise, effective communication with a loved one or colleague about their addiction involves a compassionate and strategic approach. By preparing yourself, expressing concern without judgment and encouraging professional help, you can create a supportive environment. Utilising those active listening and empathy skills can build trust and foster open dialogue, making it more likely that your loved one or colleague will feel understood and supported in their journey towards recovery. That setting of boundaries is so crucial for your own well-being. Setting and maintaining boundaries is crucial. Your personal well-being, especially when dealing with a loved one or colleague's addiction. Boundaries can really help your emotional and physical health, as well as the respect within the relationship. Creating a clear framework for you both to work together to support each other within this recovery. The importance of boundaries cannot be understated. The protection of your emotional health can prevent burnout, reduce resentment, encourages responsibility and accountability. It supports autonomy. Boundaries can provide consistency in a relationship, which helps both parties know what to expect. Healthy relationships promote respect and understanding, which are essential components for any healthy relationship. Self-care, ensuring that you take care of your own needs, which are essential for being able to support others effectively. Setting boundaries can reduce stress, can help you to identify your own limits, can help you to assess the situation. Communicate clearly and assertively, be direct and specific. For example, I can't lend you money because it impacts my financial security. Using those I statements, for example, I feel stressed when you ask for money, so I need to set a boundary around this. Be consistent, but be prepared for that pushback. Expect the resistance. Stay calm. Reach out to friends, your own support network. You may feel that you need professional help. Consider therapy, counselling to help you to maintain boundaries. Practicing self-care and prioritising your well-being. Establishing clear consequences as well. For example, if you come home intoxicated, you will need to find another place to stay for the night. Can be difficult, but crucial for you to support this person to reinforce those consequences. Setting and enforcing healthy boundaries is vital for maintaining personal well-being, especially when you're dealing with a loved one's addiction. By identifying your own limits, communicating clearly, being consistent and seeking support, you can establish boundaries that protect your health and foster a respectful relationship. Practicing self-care and being prepared for resistance are also essential strategies for ensuring that your boundaries are respected and effective. There's lots of support out there, thankfully. There's therapy. Cognitive behavioural therapy has been mentioned, motivational interviewing. The rehab, there's support groups such as AA, NA, CA, outpatient programs, detox programs. Researching the right treatment for you. It's really important that when you know what you need help with, when you're able to be honest with yourself, it's about finding that right support at the right time for you. There are several options for you, and finding the right fit for you is also really important. There's some resources that are specific to Scotland, if you're tuning in from Scotland today, that are on your screen there, such as the Scottish Families Affected by Alcohol and Drugs, the Alcohol and Drug Partnerships, ADPs. Local partnerships provide coordinated services across the NHS in Scotland. Finding a therapist as well. Lifelink offer counselling. There's some steps that you can take as well, contacting the GP, reaching out to ADP services, exploring those support groups, considering all options allows you to make that informed decision about what support and help is going to be right for you. Bearing in mind that the person that's struggling with the addiction's family may also need support, may well need support through this. Lots of family support groups are on your screen there as well. Families Anonymous, Nar Anon. being aware of what supports are out there, utilising community resources as well, local health services, charities and non-profit organisations often offer support, and not forgetting the online forums and resources that are available to you, which may be a preference to you to access support maybe from your own home and protect your anonymity as well. So making sure that there's a good fit for you. What Lifelink Workwell can offer is that one-to-one counselling, group reflective practices, wellbeing groups, stress awareness programs, sleep hygiene, nutrition, exercise and relaxation, support and guidance on these. So just to give a quick recap here, what we've covered today is understanding addiction, the signs and symptoms, the importance of boundaries, the importance of an empathetic, compassionate and non-judgmental approach, and some of the support and resources that are available to us. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed today's session, and I would really welcome your feedback on it. You can provide feedback to us by scanning this QR code. If you have any inquiries, there's a phone number on your screen there, and also an email address and a website. We'd really encourage you to get in touch with us, to have those conversations, to see how we can best provide support and help. And that is the end of my delivery. I've enjoyed being here today, and thank you once again for taking the time to join me today and to explore addiction.